This week on the OneCast, we're joined by Missile Baits owner, two-time Bassmaster Elite Series champion, current Elite Series angler, John Cruz.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What's going on, guys? Pete with the OneCast here. So excited to announce our newest podcast partner, Carolina Waters. Carolina Waters is a performance fishing and outdoor lifestyle apparel company that's based right here in North Carolina. They provide clothing like lightweight UPF shirts for those days out on the water or in the field for your hardcore fisherman or athlete. They also have casual t-shirts for those more relaxing days. Tons of different styles of headwear for the whole family. No matter what it is you're doing, if you're doing it outdoors in the Carolinas or anywhere across the country, Carolina Waters has you covered. Be sure to head over to their website, check out the apparel, find what fits your needs at carolinawatersnc.com. For the month of September, use the code TheOneCast, all one word, to save 20% off your order at carolinawatersnc.com. Again, that's carolinawatersnc.com. Use the code TheOneCast at checkout to save 20%. Appreciate y'all. Make sure you check them out. Use that code to let you know that we sent you. Help us continue to grow a culture of anglers helping anglers, one cast at a time. What's going on, OneCast fans? Welcome back to the OneCast for another episode, week, whatever we call them, we're getting closer and closer to 52, which would be a year's worth, which is pretty cool to think that we've been doing that for almost a year now. So we're coming up on that. As always, make sure you head over to OneCastFishing.com. Use the code TheOneCast at checkout to save 10%. Get some snagless jigs, long neck hooks, weedless nets, all of that good stuff. Guys, what's going on?
Not much, man. Water's low everywhere, so it's making fishing a little bit difficult, but we're getting ready to head down to Lake Lanier, so by the time everyone's hearing this, we'll already be back from that. And hunting season's full swing, and I haven't made it to the woods yet, so I'm looking forward to that. What you got going, man? Anything good?
Not much. The water is getting low. Need to be out there definitely right now. It's a great time. Or it should be a great time. There's less places for those fish to hide at least. So, yeah, it's that time of year. And then, unfortunately, I haven't been to deer woods yet either. I actually haven't been on the water, but hopefully we can change that here in the next week or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're excited. Y'all heard us with Joey last week, and he'll be coming back on. We got something special planned with him. But this week we have John Cruz on with us. We're going to talk to him about some stuff. So let me go ahead and bring on John Cruz, or as you can see, old Johnny Missile this week to the OneCast. What's going on, John?
What's up, guys? Good to see y'all.
Yeah, good to see you too. I think the last time we saw you was where? At the Classic?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's right.
Man, that seems like forever ago.
I know, man.
I do like it. For those who are watching on the video version, John's got Johnny Missile down there for his name, which is what Pete just mentioned. But I would actually love to see that on a massive boat wrap, just Johnny Missile on the side and just flying down the lake.
You know, I got to pull up something real quick. Let me scroll through this real quick before we get kicked off into this. It was funny, man. I took a screenshot of one of your Facebook posts, and I loved how you said,
"Oh, the poop baits."
Yeah, you were like, I thought it was a typo at first, and you're like, "Here are my top 3 ways to fish poop baits," and I was like, "Does he mean prop baits?" And then I started looking at it, and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." So, you just come up with those names randomly, huh?
No, that's what the whole category of those style baits is. They're called, the cover scat is really the one that got popular in the U.S. first. There were some other ones in Japan that got popular. Then Deps did the cover scat, and that thing kind of caught on, and then it caught on over here in the U.S. And then now there's probably 6 or 7 companies that have that style of bait. And so when the first bait that kind of popularizes the technique is called a scat, then all of them are called, poop baits or whatever however you want to call it. So that whole category is called poop baits.
I got to tell you, I love the way that we make names for a lot of the baits that we have, like the Ned rig that anybody or most people call it like a turd, So it's fitting to see poop bait categories and whatever the case may be.
And Berkeley's new chatterbait thing too.
What is that one?
The slobber knocker.
Oh yeah. When we were at ICAST and they were launching some of the new series, it's really funny to hear some of the names. So, but we can dive into that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's a big fun part of the bait game is naming the baits and naming the colors. It's fun.
Yeah. So yeah, man. We want to take this time to thank you. We were supposed to shoot the show about a week or so ago, and we ran into issues. So appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And let's dive right into it, man. So we were talking a little bit before the show, and we were talking about generational differences and stuff like that. But why don't you hit us with some of your thoughts in the bass fishing world from when you started to 2023. Well, I guess 2024 coming up.
Yeah, I know it's hard to believe 2024 is coming up next year. So, really, when I got started into this game, it was, I graduated college in 2000 and started fishing full time right after that. And I did everything I could basically to save money. And, I had saved up all during school to make sure that I had some money to go out there and make a go of it. And, the first, I think it was the first 3 full years that I fished, I didn't have a single paying sponsor. And so basically the way I looked at it is if I fished hard enough and I kept my expenses down, I could win my income and be able to kind of survive until I could, kind of get in there and get established in the sport. And so it took me 4 years before I had a paying sponsor. And that first paying sponsor was Triple Fish Fishing Line. Dave Burkhart down in Florida took a chance on me and paid me $100 a month. It was a massive sum of money, but it was really more of the fact that I actually had a piece of paper where somebody wrote my name and wrote me a monthly paycheck. So that meant a lot to me, and that's kind of where it started. For 3 years into it, the 4th year it kind of ramped up, and then the 5th year it really ramped up as far as becoming established. I started to make classics and do well, top 10s, all that kind of stuff. So it really took 5 to 6 years before it was the pro angler thing was a sustainable model. And kind of fast forward now, the guys, in order to qualify for the Elite Series, we're not even talking about the Elite Series yet. Just talking about the 9 Bassmaster Opens that you've got to fish and do well in just to make it to the Bassmaster Elite Series is it's a grind. It's not cheap. The payouts are not phenomenal. They're okay. They're not phenomenal, but there's a lot of traveling, a lot of expenses, and it's a tough road to go that way. But it seems like, we were talking about generational stuff before the show. There's guys that are willing to do the work to get in there. And those are the ones that I'm seeing, qualify for the elites and be successful. Your JT Tompkins, he dominated the Opens EQs this year, and he pre-fished every tournament. Like he put I think he said like 600 hours on his engine in the last year.
Wow.
Because he was going from tournament to tournament, or lake to lake to lake, river to river to river, pre-fishing before those tournaments. So he knew everything he could figure out for those places. Kyle Patrick, even the Ben Millikins, man, he did his homework and really was grinding in order for that one end goal. But in order to sustain in this industry as a pro angler, you've got to hustle on kind of every aspect of what you have the ability to hustle. It's not just making a couple social media posts anymore. That's just a given. You have to do that. But there's a lot of other things that you can do to grind and make that difference and put your name above other people's in the minds of the people that are looking to sponsor anglers. That's just kind of what we were talking about beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely an underlying theme. So we've had several current Elite Series, former Elite Series. Destin DeMarion's been on. We had Matty Wong Joey Cifuentes, yourself. Everybody we've had on, Harvey, it's the same underlying theme. Everybody thinks, and I thought it for a long time, before I got into the fishing industry and around shows and met people and things, that once you got to that level, you were just fishing. But there's so much more than just going out and fishing. The grind isn't just 3 days of practice and maybe 3 or 4 days of a tournament. It's pre-practice, practice, events, shows. A big thing now is filming with sponsors. I know Missile does some stuff, but going out with your sponsors on days to film content for them so that they can put together stuff to put out. So that it's a job inside of a job inside of a job. And then for you, if you want to, we kind of heard you came out of college, you went into it, but you started Missile while you were in college, correct?
No, I started Missile 10 years after I was a pro angler, or a full-time angler, I should say. So it was when I started as a pro angler, I always said from before I even started that the pro angler thing was going to open a door for me to do something else business-wise. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but I knew that it was going to open the door for me to do something else other than just the fishing aspect of it. I love the fishing part of it is what we love, like the competition. I love that. I love doing that. But from a business perspective, a pro angler is only as valuable as their name is at that point in time. If you stop fishing tournaments, it doesn't take long before, as a sponsor, why would you sponsor somebody that's not relevant anymore? So there's a shelf life, and it's only as long as that sustains. So if you can create an entity like a business that goes, it doesn't matter whether you're there or not. If the business entity is set up properly, it's going to create its own value to whether you're fishing tournaments or not. And I didn't know exactly what that business entity was going to be. And early on, come right fresh out of college, the easiest things accessible to see and kind of relate to were TV shows. You got your Hank Parker and your Bill Dance and your Jimmy Houston and those guys. And even Jimmy Houston utilized his name on boat dealerships. Now, he had a partial ownership in those boat dealerships, but Jimmy Houston Marine, they're all over Oklahoma and sold a ton of boats. So he utilized his name in order to create a business entity, kind of a business empire that he's able to, it's able to sustain, even beyond his TV show. And so it didn't take maybe a couple of years after college and fishing full time to realize I didn't want to do the TV show. It just didn't, it didn't fit where I thought I would be best utilized. And so I started working with Spro, I guess it was 16 years ago now. And I started designing crankbaits. And I started designing baits. I would design them, test them, prototype them, tweak them, get them just right. Then we would, take them to market. I would help promote and I helped sell, not necessarily like to dealers, but I would just help promote and talk about the baits and try to get the word out there. And then we do it again. Then we design another bait. And I loved that process. And I was doing that with hard baits with Spro, and I wanted to do that with soft baits. And I did, at the time, I didn't have a soft bait sponsor. I started looking around. I had a couple of companies that wanted to partner with me and do that. But I really felt like that maybe this was my business entity that I wanted to start. And I had a business plan. I put that together. I had two other pro anglers that were going to go into, we're going to be a partnership in this business. And then one of them had a ridiculous offer to go do something else. So then it was down to the two of us. And then the other angler started getting cold feet, and I could just sense it. And I said, look, I think I can do it by myself, financially. I'm going to try, but I want you to be a part of it. And they were like, okay, that's cool. Because it kind of gave them an out to get out of it. So I started it on my own. I'm really glad that I did, because it just makes decisions way easier when you're the head honcho, and nobody, you don't have to report to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I started Missile, and for right from the gate, I started in 2012. January 2012 is when we came into business. But I was working on things, for over a year before that, as far as business plans and connections and sources and pricing and logos, you name it, and designs, all that kind of stuff took a full year to kind of have everything ready. But that was kind of what I wanted to start. And I wanted to start an entity right out of the gate that could function whether I was present or not. So I didn't want to start it like in my garage. And then, if I was out of town, I couldn't ship the baits. And then like my wife would have to ship the bait. I wanted to create an entity that had its own identity right out of the gate. And we started with two full-time employees, and we had a 2,400 square foot office and warehouse to start with. So that's kind of where we began right out of the gate. And of course it cost more money, but it also was like an instant entity right out of the box.
So we talked about that generational difference at the beginning. Do you, based on your, you are a huge steward of the profession. When I look at somebody that's like a steward of a profession, somebody that acts within the, the ethics and morals and everything like that, that's somebody that people value. And not everyone's cut from the same cloth, of course, but like when it comes to the newer anglers, do you think that the industry does a good job at selling that business mindset, or is it more like, the motto of Bass, what is it? Big Bass, big stage, big dreams type deal. Are they more geared towards, I can make a living just tournament fishing?
I think the majority of bass anglers, whichever trail you look at, but the majority of professional bass anglers just don't look at the whole scene the same way I do. I mean, I know the majority of them, and they just don't. But there's a handful, I don't know, a quarter of them or so that probably look at it the same way I do. And the way I look at it is that whichever tournament trail that I'm fishing, whether it's Bassmaster, FLW, MLF, whatever, that is your platform to promote that is your platform for your business. That's all that is. They are not the sole support for you to make your living off of. I don't look at it that way. I just don't. I think that the media platform on the tournament trails, I love the tournaments. I love the competition. I want the payouts to be 10x of what they are now, but we're not, the business model for the fishing industry in the sport of professional bass fishing is not there yet to have a 10x payouts from what they are. I think where they are now, at least in Bassmaster, is a sustainable model. We can keep it there and kind of hopefully grow it from now until you want to stop fishing. It's not an unsustainable model. Bassmaster makes money every year. That's good. So now I look at Bassmaster as just a media platform to promote my name, my sponsors' names, and my company's name, the Missile Baits. Like that's the platform that I've used to make a name for myself in the fishing world, is through the Bassmaster Elite Series. And that's just, I think, a little bit different mentality than what a lot of other pro anglers. Like I said, there's probably a quarter of all the pro anglers look at it the same way as I do. I know like the Swindles and Iconelli, Ish Monroe, like those guys I know very well. They have that same mindset. It's not about what can Bassmaster do for me. It's like, how can I utilize Bassmaster to help grow my name and make my living the way I need to make it, through sponsors, through any other kind of business dealings. And then, like the tournament winnings are really just kind of added income if you're able to catch them.
Yeah, I think meeting different anglers, when you talk to them, like you hit the nail on the head. Some of the guys get it and they understand they're salesmen, and their platform is the elites. That's where they're able to sell either themselves, their sponsors, all of that stuff. And it's interesting because it does seem to be some of the younger guys, you kind of you get to talk to them and they don't have that same mentality. It's sort of like fish.
It's not. Yeah, not all the younger guys. There are definitely some younger guys that look at it the same way I do. I mentioned Kyle Patrick earlier. He just qualified for the elites. He looks at it exactly the same way I do. He does not. It's not the other way around. He's out there ready to hustle based on, all right, now I've qualified for the biggest platform. Now how am I gonna hustle around and help out my sponsors so they can in turn help me out and we can make this thing work. I mean, he knows that the better he catches them, the better it all works. And he's got the right mindset. I think some of the younger anglers, I just don't know some of the other new guys quite as well, but there's definitely a number of them that look at it that way. And it's a grind. It is not, if you want to become a professional angler, it's not what you want to do. If you get out there on Lake Norman or any of the lakes, like Grand Lake, wherever you see those giant mansions on the hill, I promise you those are not professional bass anglers. Those are somebody else. They've made their money another way. So if you want to have one of them $10 million mansions, your professional bass angler ain't the way to do it, man. But if you enjoy 14-hour days on the water and then the next day 6 hours of sleep maybe, and then the next day you get up and you do it again because you love it, then professional bass angler might be for you.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, it actually surprises me that maybe it's such a small percentage that think like you do, John. Especially what I look at over the last decade and a half, ever since the 2008 crisis. Because when you started fishing, that was still the heyday, I would imagine, of bass fishing, right? Was that still the Sitco deal, early 2000s?
Yep. Yeah, there's still a lot of those non-endemics.
All right. You had the explosion in the 90s, and it was, you had all the money in the sport, right? I think $300,000 prizes, right, for just a normal tournament. I think that was what the FLW was at the time.
Yeah.
So I guess the point is, like, you had all that, and you saw the crash in society, the economics, but the money's not returned back to even our industry, and you've seen. And on top of that, with the way companies can spread their money around to other social media influencers, I'm surprised more people don't have to grind because they have to grind in a sense, because it's just not as maybe economically feasible as it was 20, 30 years ago to be a professional angler, to do it in the traditional sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I see that. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the cost to play the game is probably higher now than it was to get in. So like your startup cost is higher now than it was 20 years ago, but you have the potential to make it back. But what that does is, when you have that higher startup cost, is it makes it to where if you have one bad year, you might be done financially. You might be out. And that was one of the reasons Bassmaster went to that 9-tournament schedule for the Opens, is to really kind of weed out the ones that didn't have their shit together. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't. If you didn't have your stuff together and you just like scrapped together 3 tournaments, then you got thrown out there to this really high cost. Fishing against the damn bass fishing bullies of the world that'll take your lunch money in the Elite Series. Like, guys were coming out and we'd have a rookie class of 10 people. Then two of them wouldn't even be able to finish the season financially. Like, they'd fish the first 4 events, never make a single check. They'd be upside down and run out of money and not be able to sustain and keep going. So that does not happen as often. And I think by Bassmaster moving to that 9-tournament thing, guys are like, man, I can't even qualify. It's like, well, if you can't fish the 9 tournaments to qualify, then how are you going to fish the 9 tournaments in the Elite Series? It's like you're going to take a chance at 3 and then I guess quit your job. But to me, that's a terrible decision. Yep. If that's your, you need to be fully in if you're going to be a pro at it from the beginning. And that's kind of the way I did it at the beginning. There's a number of other guys that did it that way. We were full-time from the word go, from even trying to qualify to get to that top level. So that's, you can't It doesn't go the other way around. It's not like there's no easy way to get to the PGA Tour. Like, you can't just play in one tournament and then become like, oh, now you're on the PGA Tour. Congratulations. No, you have to, like, it's a rigorous process to qualify to get up there. And the Elite Series is the same way. And that's the way it should be. Because now, I mean, I look at those 9 guys. I don't think, from what I understand, I don't think any of those 9 guys are going to have to bail after 4 or 5 tournaments because they run out of money, which is what we were running into 6 and 8 years ago.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it. Like, I think I'm in agreement with you on the 9 tournaments. Like, a lot of people were like, well, you took the working man out of it. Well, the problem was the working man that everybody was thinking of are those guys that couldn't afford to do 9 tournaments on the Elite Series, or didn't have the time to do those 9 tournaments on the Elite Series. Really, I think Bass did them a disservice going that route, because they built this up that, oh, you're at the top of the top, but never prepared them for what that really was. Now you have to fish the 9 EQs. You get a better understanding of the travel schedule, the financial constraints, the competition, all of that. Now, before you even make it there, you understand more what goes into it. And thinking back, like, to my childhood, right? Like, watching the tournaments, watching the Bassmaster Classic. Like, my dream, when I went out there and was walking around the pond as a kid catching bass, I never won the St. Lawrence River event. I won the Bassmaster Classic every time, right? So I think the real working man's dream is to fish the Classic, and they didn't take that away. Like, you can still qualify, fish in those 3 tournaments to fish that one to get you on the biggest stage for the biggest event in bass fishing. So I think people had misplaced what the real dream was. If you think, and it literally just clicked while you were talking, John. I was thinking back to, like, my childhood, and it wasn't to fish professionally. It was to fish that dang Bassmaster Classic. Like, that's what we wanted to do.
Right. I mean, that's always the goal. But going back to the EQs, I was thinking this. It prepares those guys even better because, like you mentioned, John, the payouts. I mean, they're not as good as on the Elite Series. You don't have the visibility, so you probably don't have the sponsor dollars, right? And we all know, because we've heard it over and over again, just because you make the elites doesn't mean sponsors are calling. But you do have more visibility, and you probably have more leverage in those negotiations. So if you could make it on the 9 with less payouts, less sponsor dollars, and these guys should be set up to do fairly well, hopefully, in the next few years.
I just look at the all 9 as a really good business decision by Bass as well. They're not only keeping the Bassmaster Classic as an opportunity for the regional qualifiers, but it also, you got to look like, 2 to 5 fiscal years out from a business perspective and say, if these guys are going to fish all 9, I know that they're going to be locked in, right? There's guaranteed money going towards Bass and then coming back to the anglers. So from a return on investment standpoint, it's a really good move for Bass, and it sets the conditions, because the last thing that they want is to see somebody file for bankruptcy, lose their house, lose their family, stuff like that. So at the end of the day, it is about business, and they made a smart move. I know there's a lot of people that are opposed to that, but you wouldn't want someone taking that. You wouldn't want to dump all your money into something that you're going to lose. That's a bad business decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, though, you got to chase your, some guys, you're willing to do whatever to chase their dream. I know a guy 20 years ago that was that made a decent name for himself in the industry and on tour. And he started to have some bad years, started to run out of money, actually reverse mortgaged his house so he could fish for a couple more years, fished for a couple more years, and ended up losing his house. And had to quit, and then just started over. Went and got a regular job, and got a new house, all that kind of had to reset. But from what I understand, he's like, I have zero regrets. I'd put my house up again to be able to have another shot at it. Like those were the best years of my life. Traveling around the country and fishing the top level bass tournaments. So a lot of guys are willing to do whatever because that's their dream. And I'm in that category, but luckily it worked out for me, and I've been able to sustain for over 20 years doing it.
So we hear that a lot, like the dream. But I think, everyone has their own definition of a dream. Some are to make it to the Classic, some's to win the Classic, whatever the case may be. Some's to provide, a stable platform for their family to thrive and their kids to move off and do things, have it better than we had it. But so going into this, like, what was your dream and have your dreams changed?
I feel like that I've wanted to definitely win more tournaments and be more consistent at making the classic. I wanted to at least have a couple conversations about Angler of the Year. That is such a tough award to win. It is just, it's just a monster. I thought it was years ago. I thought it was just like my style just was not attainable. There's no way I could finish that high. And then as I started fishing and getting to know the other anglers, I felt like my style of fishing and the way I fished was very comparable to like a Brent Chapman. And then all of a sudden Brent Chapman had this fantastic year and he won Angler of the Year. And I was like, I don't know, it hit me like a brick. I was like, holy crap, I can win Angler. If Brent can win it, I can win it. Not that like I'm a better angler, but I felt like I was a comparable angler to Brent. I just saw Brent a couple of weeks ago and we talked for a long time. We didn't necessarily talk about that. We talked about all kind of stuff. I like Brent and his wife quite a bit there, but my point was that I felt like I'm on the same level with him. And there's guys like Van Dam and Iaconelli. Like those guys they're a special breed, man. They never falter. I felt like that back then there's no way I could compete with those guys at the end of the Aaron Martins, those kind of guys. Like they're freaks as far as angling skill goes. And I have to work really, really hard just to even get right where I am. And, that's why I joke with some people. I'm like, man, I'm just, and they're like, oh, you did really well, this, that. I'm like, dude, I'm just a try hard guy that sometimes it all works out, just keep trying hard. But yeah, I thought that, that would be, almost an unattainable goal. Now I think it is possible if I could string together, 9 good tournaments. It's very, very possible. The last couple of years, it seemed like I've been stuck in mediocrity, and it's been kind of frustrating, but was able to still crack and have a few good tournaments here and there. So I just need to be able to try to get on a roll, so to speak, get some momentum and be able to string them all together for a whole season.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking earlier about the guys that did make it and this year that qualified, and you bring up a guy like Iaconelli or Kevin Van Dam. If you look at other sports and you think about superstars or people they just have it. Like it's almost like a generational talent. Right?
There's
like
levels.
There's just something
there
different.
Levels.
Everybody at that level in the elites, all 100 and whatever it's going to be this year, 103 whatever, are the 103 best in the world. Right? Everybody can catch them. But then you have those generational talents. So you said it's like they never falter. It's like you expect them. Well, they didn't do it. They're not going to have a great tournament. They struggled, and then they come in and they're still right there. And there's guys like you, and I know myself. I have to work twice as hard as everybody I fish against just to be successful. It's just interesting. But you can do it. You won one 2 years ago. Where last year, 2022, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think it probably at that level, especially, it's even harder to string together 9 good tournaments because, like you said, those are the bass fishing bullies, man. They're all there to take everybody's lunch money, and
that's right. Yeah, I joked with people before, the difference in the Elite Series and then basically any other tournament trail is that you go out there and you have an okay practice and you're like, okay, I should be able to have 13, 14, 15 pounds a day. I think that's going to do pretty good. I've seen 1 4-pounder in 3 days of practice. I should do okay. And you go out there, things are a little bit different. So you start out with a couple 2-pounders, and then during the day you end up catching a 3.5 and then another 3. And then next thing you know, you have, like 14.5 pounds because the fish had changed. You figured them out. You're like, sweet. The fish changed. It was kind of tough. I still caught 14.5 pounds. That's really about the best I've seen in practice. I should be okay. You put them on the scales, 61st place. And you're like, what in the world? It's 16.1 is the cut. Like, how did I, where did I, and like you see all these guys that are in the top 15 you're like, I saw him over there and I saw him over there and he fished that one bank I fished. And then this, you're like, holy crap, man. It's a whole nother level of competition at that Elite Series level. And I can't, and it's because the field top to bottom it's the best of the best. And it's been like that for almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
I don't remember who said it, but I remember hearing this for one of the anglers on the Elites, like, you guys or somebody on the tour, they're going to catch what lives in the lake. So if there's potential for 25-pound bags in that lake, someone's going to probably come out with a 25-pound bag.
Yeah.
Like it's phenomenal. And what always gets me, especially like compared to like some like maybe the FLW tour days, but like after day one, it always seems like day two, you need to double the cut line and maybe add a pound or two to be safe to make day three. It's just like you guys figure them out and you get better and better throughout the tournament. And it's got to be difficult. You got to bring your A game every single time. It's hard to.
Well, that leads me to a question, John, about being in the field with 103 or 104 of the best anglers in the world. And it goes with the saying, like, if you're the smartest or best person in the room, you're in the wrong room, and you're surrounded by 104 or 103 others that are just as good, sometimes better than you. Where do you see some of the do you see sometimes anglers hang their head really low and just like, you know what, like, this isn't for me? Like, where does that happen at in your experience? Is that with the newer guys, or is that with like the guys that have been around a long time, the ones that are just like, maybe I don't belong in this room anymore?
You talking about just as far as the mental game goes?
Yeah, the mental game.
So the mental game is a big deal at the elite level, and not as many people talk about it. And I'll tell you that I feel like Kevin Van Dam was probably the best mentally that I've ever fished around and been in conjunction with. I observed it, and I'd go talk to him about it, and I would laugh about it. I'm like, dude, it's just it really was very Tiger Woods-esque in the way that he would play mental games with a lot of his competition. In my opinion, there were a number of tournaments he was not on the best fish, and he was not the best fisherman in the contention to win that tournament, but he ended up winning that tournament because he, for lack of a better term, would play mind games with some of his competition. And honestly, one of the ones that he would pick on the most is Aaron Martins. Aaron Martins, in my opinion, is probably the best angler to ever pick bass angler to ever pick up a rod and reel, but his mental game was not as high as a Van Dam or a Clun. Like, Van Dam could not penetrate Clun. He couldn't affect him. Clun is just like a stone mentally. Like, dude, you're not getting that guy. But his Clun's angling skill is not near what Van Dam's is. So he couldn't, but their careers overlapped as far as when they were both peaking. They definitely overlapped, and so they had their battles. But as far as I think I think that Martins is probably the best one to ever pick up a rod and reel. But in my opinion, that same insecurity about what was going on with other anglers was almost one of his strong suits as well, because he would always tinker and change and tinker and change and tinker quickly until he figured out really what they wanted in 20 minutes versus it'd take me 2 days to figure the same thing out.
Yeah.
He would just make really, really rapid, quick adjustments, partially due to his insecurity. But guys like Van Dam would play onto that. And I mean, I observed it, and then like Van Dam would say something and he'd turn and he'd look at me and then he'd wink. Like, he just knew what he was doing, man. It was really funny to watch. I feel like Ike and Ellie had a different way to do it. He would just be so full throttle and so like hardcore and screaming and in your face. Like, he intimidated a lot of other anglers on the water, and not necessarily like intentionally, but just his style and his, like, people were like, God, I don't want to get in his way.
Yeah.
And back in the day, Tommy Biffle was notorious for getting in people's face, yeah, I ain't seen you in here yesterday. Where you at? Like he would just, I mean, a lot of people are like, man, I don't want to have to put up with that. So they just wouldn't even fish around him. Not, I mean, Tommy may have been totally in the wrong, but they're like, I just don't want to listen to that. So they didn't want to fish around him. So that there was definitely some of that mind game stuff that goes on. I feel like that over the last 20 years, it's definitely a little bit more cordial on the water, but you know, we're all mountain goats, man. We'll butt heads every once in a while. Yeah. So it still happens with that kind of stuff, but not near to the extent, you know, like I was explaining to somebody not too long ago, like, you know, a lot of marshals will be surprised at how casual we are in competition in the Elite Series. You know, I might pull up to a point and Bill Owen or Matt Herron's there, and I'm like, hey, Matt, I'd like to fish this point right here, but I want to fish that left side of here where that little rocky spot is. Are you fishing that by chance? And if he's not fishing it, he'll say, no, man, I'm not fishing that. I'm fishing this right side over here. It's got these 3 or 4 big stumps on it. There's some big ones on it. Oh, okay, cool. I'm going to just hit that little rocky spot over there. And, you know, I'll leave your stumps alone. Okay, cool. And we'll fish almost side by side, make our cast. And then I'll go about my way or he'll go about his way, whatever it might be. And marshals are like, man, I've never seen that before, you know, because that stuff doesn't happen in as many, you know, local tournaments because like we don't have ownership on those spots. And that's the biggest difference. A lot of times we're fishing like Norfolk somewhere like that. And we're sharing this point that we both found in practice. I've never caught fish on it other than like 2 days in practice or something. It's not like I own that point. Whereas if you're fishing your home lake, then you got that one point where you've never seen anybody else fishing it, or you've seen like 2 other guys, but this ain't them other 2 guys. You get a little more defensive and things get a little crossed up that way. But also, like I've known Matt for 20 years and I've known Bill Lowen for 20 years. I've watched his kids grow up from being babies and now they're like, you know, young adults. And it's cool to, you know, you get that kind of camaraderie and you have that fraternity. You know, I don't wish him any ill will. I just want to do better than he does in the tournament, and I want to do it the right way. And that's how the majority of the guys out there on the elites are. It's pretty cool, really.
It's really unique for anybody that's competitive and played sports because everybody's essentially playing on the same team, right? Your team Bassmaster, like everybody's playing on the same team, but you're all playing against each other and yourselves. So you do, like you said, you have that fraternity when you make it there. You're all kind of on the same team and you have those bonding. You go to events, and obviously there's people that don't like each other, and you get that drama too. But it's a whole different dynamic when you think about it that way. Where like for us, again, back to the local stuff, like I'm thinking like, you know, we don't get that, but like when we go to a tournament and you see Jim pull up and you're like, Jim's here. And it's like, this is Jim's lake. He's going to have 40 pounds. The elites, everybody's Jim. So you're fishing against 100 Jims and you got to try to compete with the local hammer at every tournament. It's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, the local thing is kind of interesting because if you fish, you know, local tournaments a fair amount, you can go down the lake and be like, oh yeah, there's Chad's docks over there. Chad always fishes them docks. And you go down a little further and there's like, that's Bill's point, man. He always fishes that point. And then you go down a little further and be like, yeah, that bank over there, that's where old Cletus, he fishes that bank all the time. So if you're caught on one of them spots, like, dude, what were you doing on Bill's point? You know, Bill fishes that point all the time. What you know, you gonna poach Bill? Like, what the heck?
Bill should have a faster boat.
It's funny, like, you know, just fishing down here at Smith Mountain, there's places that are like that people know. Like, that's old Johnny's point over there. You know,
Johnny Missile.
He's gonna fish it sometime during the day, maybe 2 or 3 times.
Can you send me all Alex's stuff on Smith Mountain? So.
It all becomes Alex's. Yeah.
It all becomes his.
you know, but on the flip side of that, right? It's awesome you guys could pull up next to each other and have those conversations. And for the most time, it's cordial. If it's not, we end up seeing on Bassmaster Live because the drama. But I don't know, Trey, you're out on the lake all the time, and because he's almost like the lake hammer now because he's out there 5 days a week.
That's not true. I have a job.
Everyone follows him to his spots. They just pull up on him.
That's true. I mean, like, but you know, I I don't have an issue sharing water because I'm not competing at, John's level. Like I think there's a difference between healthy competition and toxic competition. And, and you bring up a good point. Like, but if I'm out there fishing a tournament, I'm not going to let you in unless I know you. Like we're part of Team OneCast together or whatever the case may be, right? Or Team Bassmaster. But, when it comes to, let's rewind and go back to the generations. What are you seeing differently? Are you seeing anything differently now with the newer guys coming up? Like I know that there's a sniff test. There has to be. Every newbie, every new guy.
We've talked about it because Maddie talked about it.
Maddie talked, and he has really good things to say about you. Like, welcome to the fraternity, bro. Like, let's do this, Yeah. But what does that look like for a new guy coming up? Are they gonna talk to you and share and ask to come in on that rock pile to the left versus the logs to the right, or how does that work with those guys?
So I think when a new class of rookies steps onto the Elite Series, some of them come in with like people know who they are, and then some of them people don't know who they are, so they're just going to wait and see how they are. Like when Criollo Fujito qualified, a lot of guys, he only fished like 3-4 tournaments. So a lot of guys didn't really know who he was. And I think now that we've gone through a season, everybody knows he is not going to hole jump you. Like he is not going to, like if you're fishing and doing well on some spot, he's not going to snake in there and be there the next day. Like that's just not who he is. He goes out there and he finds like weird crap that only he finds. Yeah. And so guys kind of get a name for themselves after 3 or 4 or 5 tournaments, and it's kind of interesting because, like, if the rookie class is standing there, there's about half of the Elite Series that doesn't know who they are, really doesn't know what to say to them, and they just kind of like strut around in front of them like a rooster until they know who they are. They're like, "Look, don't you come in here." Don't you come in here acting fool, and then like strut around. Don't talk to him, but like strut around in front of them, and they're scared to talk to him. This is honest truth. But after like 4 or 5 tournaments, guys will show who they are, and once they have kind of like shown who they are, then guys are like, "Yeah, what's up, Joey? How you doing, man? Good to see you, man. Good job on that last tournament. We know you're doing things the right way. What's up, man? Like, welcome to it." It's funny, man. It'll take guys multiple tournaments before they even say anything to these guys. And the reason I say that is at the first tournament of the year this year at Okeechobee, I pulled up on the bank waiting for my marshal, and I pulled up right next to Joey Cifuentes. And Joey was sitting there in his cowboy hat, tying his stuff together, and he's 5 feet from me. I was like, "Hey, Joey." And he turns and looks. I'd never talked to Joey Cifuentes in my life. I looked over at Joey. I was like, "Joey," and I reached out. I'm like, "Hey, dude, welcome to the Elites." And he gave me a fist bump, and he kind of like looked at me and he shook his head, and I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're the first angler to welcome me to the Elite Series." And I was like, "Well, most of them I guess they don't know who you are, Joey." He kind of looked at me funny. I'm like, no, they don't know how you're gonna be. And he was like, "Huh." And I was like, "Well," I said, "or maybe they're just dickheads. Who knows?" Yeah. and he got a big chuckle out of that. I'm like, "Man, I'm just kidding." I said, "Seriously, most of the guys just don't know how you're going to be." I said, "You've been doing well for a while." And I said, I saw you, qualifying. And I'm like, "Oh, he'll be on the Elites before too long." And sure enough, he was. And sure enough, he finished in the top 10 in the points because the dude's a straight up hammer. And he's a good dude. Now it's funny to watch. I mean, towards the end of the season, even won his second tournament. He's won his second Elite Series after St. Clair. All kind of people were congratulating him because they know they know he's a good dude and he does his own thing and he doesn't jump, he doesn't fish around on top of anybody and does things the right way and all that. So now everybody kind of knows him now, and everybody's cool, even though he's taking our money. Everybody's cool with that.
So we have to. So you lit a fire under Joey. I mean, like you kind of pulled a. I don't want to say a Van Damme, but you kind of pulled that like, "Hey, nobody knows who you are." You didn't mean it that way, but maybe he was like, "Oh, I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to show you guys who I am now."
He was gonna smoke him either way. I think.
Yeah. So you talked. So we don't want to let your secrets out on how you do like your psychological operations or anything like that. But like who is like that still? Who do you view as like, it's hard to say this, but like who's your modern day like KVD attitude, Rick Clun attitude, even though Rick's still fishing? Do you see some of those younger generations carry on some of that?
I'd say the biggest goon on the Elite Series right now is Corey Johnston, and he is a self-proclaimed goon. That was his role when he played hockey. He always would say, Chris is the scorer and I was the goon. He's like, yeah, you need somebody taken out. I'm your guy. He said, if you need a goal scored, he's like, give it to Chris. He said, because I'm not that guy. But his mentality is kind of the same, but it's almost like Chris is really more of the assassin because he's actually accomplished a little bit more. I mean, Chris and Corey are both phenomenal anglers, but Corey is a little more of I've seen him get into other anglers' heads, I feel like, because he's wide open and is like, I'm going to smash him tomorrow. The guys, you better, like in the little pregame stuff, Dave Mercer walking around and talking to guys. He's like, yeah, I'm going to smash him today. It's going to be really good. Conditions are setting up. And, I think I got, potential for a really big bag is there and I'm going to go do it. And guys, and I've seen guys kind of like, whoa, okay. All right. And so he's probably the one that I'd say vocally plays the game the best right now. But man, there's a lot of guys that are, you got your Patrick Walters and, guys like that are like, they're almost so nice, but they are going to go smash them in the last day of the tournament. So it's hard to say now. There is not, like Van Dam was dominant for so many years. It was obvious to look at him versus basically his arch nemesis there for a number of years, who was Aaron, and the two of them kind of battled back and forth for a lot of AOYs and Bassmaster Classics and things like that. But then in that era, you also had guys like Edwin Evers who won a lot of stuff, Angler of the Years, Classic stuff like that. But he was not very vocal. Like he was not that intimidating factor that like Kevin was. But so everybody's kind of got their different style, so to speak. And then, but today there's not too many guys that are as vocal as say Kevin was on the water, at least from my observations.
You could see the Ike wide open intimidation factor on like lives and stuff, because they'd have a camera on a boat with somebody else, and you'd hear that yell from down the lake, echoing through the lake, and you could see that guy like, oh, Ike's on him, and almost like it starts to click in their head. So that's interesting that you brought that.
I always, I know I told this before, and I think we mentioned on podcasts. Like I've always wished at some point, maybe Championship Sunday, like they would put microphones on the boat so you guys could talk trash to each other back and forth, right? And let those head games happen, because I think that would be a fun. I mean, it's all personality based. Some guys wouldn't talk at all, but like they had the entertainment value to watch. Like you catch a 5-pounder and be like, hey, Johnny Missile, what's going on? Like, what are you going to do now?
Are you going to D-bomb or are you going to D-bomb? No, it is cool.
The best would be when somebody loses one and, he'd be like, oh, that's too bad, buddy. That probably hurt. And geez, I hope that wasn't more than 6 pounds, because it looked like it was.
Yeah. No, that would actually be really good for entertainment purposes and probably motivate a lot of people, and then probably destroy a lot of people at the same time. So, so something that's not talked about a lot, but from your perspective, there's a lot of guys going into the professional fishing world. Doesn't matter what league you're in. And, there's a lot of people that work together as a team, and then there's people that work as an individual. And from your perspective, how hard is it for somebody to, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but you got guys that will roll solo, and then you got guys that work together, like the Johnsons. It's no secret they work together. All the guys with their YouTube series and stuff coming out, they all work together. Is that a challenge? Is that really hard to compete like an individual versus a team mentality?
It really is. I mean, you have to have like a click or a little network in order to be able to break down these lakes within the 2.5 to 3 days that we have to break them down. So for 10 plus years, it was myself, Mike Iaconelli, and Ish Monroe, and we would break these lakes down, going forward. And we had a kind of a motto that we would verbalize and talk about in the house, and it was like, all of us together on average are going to be better than we would be separately, individually. Now, there might be one tournament where, one of us figures something out, and if we don't tell anybody, we might be able to do a little bit better. But over the course of the season, if we share information enough to just help each other, it would raise all of our finishes on average. So instead of maybe finishing an average of 40th, we might all finish an average of 32nd. Or 30th, and that might be the difference between making the Bassmaster Classic and not, or Angler of the Year and not, or whatever that might be, or having 3 top 10s instead of 1, because we shared that information. And what in the information we always talk about, we would never discuss locations. We would we might talk about mid lake versus up lake or down lake, something like that, but we would just be more specific as far as like, I got. Maybe I could say, I got about 15 bites on a jig in 15 to 20 feet of water. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Like, dude, that's a huge help. And we wouldn't be like, all right, now what? He's like, okay, was on secondary points and this, that, and the other, and get really intricate. And then you look at a map and you're like, I just found his best 3 spots.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, not what the whole point was. The point was there's a lot of fish in 15 to 20 feet of water that you might want to figure out how to catch them. Mm-hmm. So then I might go out there and fish and come back and be like, Ike, did you throw a crankbait in 15 to 20? He might say no. I'm like, dude, I just caught 2 over 5, and I had a couple other bites in that 15 to 20 foot range on a crankbait. Might be a little way to catch a bigger one. All of a sudden now it's like the return help is and he might add a crankbait on his deck to where he was just going to stick with the jig almost exclusively before I said that, and then we become better as a group. So when Ike and Ish left the elites, I started rooming with Ed Lochran and Derek Hudnall, and then we had Brian Schmidt join us. So for the last 3 years, it's been Schmidt, Hudnall, and Ed and myself in the house, and we've all shared information with that same kind of mentality. And dude, it's been hard. Like I laugh, or I almost joke, because I've almost had to train them how to share information, because Ed wants to be like, yeah, I fished that point. I'm like, dudes, no. Don't tell me what point you fished. I don't care. And I'm not telling you what point I fished. If you happen to find that, then you find it. That's fine. But I'm not going to be like, hey, I said, because that's when it gets weird. Because if I say, yeah, I caught him on this point, if you show up on that point, I'm immediately pissed off at you.
Yeah.
Because I told you where I was fishing, and then all of a sudden now you're on it. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to help you next tournament, bud. Like, not going to happen, because you're going to poach me. But maybe you wanted to fish that, or maybe you fished it. Maybe you fished it before I told you that's the point I was on. It just gets weird. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you don't talk about locations until practice is totally over. Or maybe not even talk about it. There's a number of times me and Ish, we would exchange information and he'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of on this kind of stuff and I'm fishing this over here. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm fishing kind of the same stuff. We'd show up the first morning of the tournament, we're fishing the same spot. Or like the same area, and we would laugh and we'd be like, I knew it. I knew you were fishing the same. Like, we were rooming together and would not even know it until and then that way we didn't care. Yeah. You're like, all right, well, I'm gonna hit this right side. You went, okay, well, I hit the left side, and then we'll meet in the back, and then we'll kind of compare notes, and just that was just the way we did it, and it really worked well for us because then he's on the point that I'm on. You're like, oh man, awesome, you found this too. Okay, cool. Like there was no beef. There was no issue. And it's just taken a few years to try to kind of explain that to this new group to really understand, to me, the best way to work together.
So Do you think that comes at a cost though? And I say that because if a relationship is burned or your competitors find out your vulnerabilities or weaknesses, which you don't want to chum the water, they're all sharks there. But do you see that as having a catastrophic failure at any point in time, or sometimes do the results show like these other two guys aren't fishing well and neither am I, like I need to maybe make a change or whatever the case may be. I don't want to like paint anybody as like, oh, you three just finished bad, but like, do you ever see that not be a good thing?
There, I don't think it wasn't this year. I can't remember what tournament it was. I think it was a tournament last year. Nobody in the house figured out squat, and all of us had a bad tournament because we all missed it. We all missed the bite. We all missed what was going on because we all like none of us figured it out, and none of us had any like spot that was all good. But that's the exception. Normally one or more of us will figure out something, and then it's up to the other ones to kind of like take that information and go with it, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Do you?
So it's not as detrimental, but I do see there are a number of guys that work together, and then halfway through the season they don't room together anymore. Like there's definitely things that go sideways with guys, but in my opinion, it's because the groundwork was not laid out at the beginning, and that communication was not reciprocating the properly. So I've seen that a number of times, and I mean I don't want to name any names, but I've seen a couple of times where it's been it's been predictable that something was going to go south.
Do you think kind of on the flip side of that, because we see a lot of these groups, cliques working together, and we've seen it obviously after the tournament started, where half the field isn't fishing an area, but on day 2, like 90% of the field ends up showing up there because that's where it's going down. But have you seen it maybe because everyone's kind of working together in the little groups that it kind of shrinks the fishery in a sense? Has that been a problem?
It can, yeah. Oh yeah. It definitely can. Back in the I'd say probably 10, 12 years ago, when the on the water coverage started to really ramp up, that there would be guys that would go through the photo galleries at night trying to see where guys were fishing. and then they would show up there on the second day. So if they went through the photo gallery and they're like, oh, well, there's a picture of Clun fishing next to that buoy marker, and then there's a picture of Lowen fishing next to that buoy marker, like, oh, I see the pattern here. I see what's going, and they're both in the top 10. They're like, I see what's going on. Now all of a sudden, you can't even come close to a buoy marker the next day because people figured it out. Now some of that happens still, but they made a rule that says you can't comb the Bassmaster website with the intent to find out where people are fishing. But with that being said, like you might run up and down the river and be like, damn, I saw Clun and I saw Lowen on 2 different buoy markers. I might have to fish buoy marker. And then all of a sudden, the kind of word gets out, and 2 or 3 clicks figured out, and all of a sudden there's 12 boats that know they're stacked on buoy markers. Yep. And all then that word gets out into a click, but it doesn't make it to where it's broadcast across everything. So yeah, it does. That definitely does happen. I know with the BPT stuff, the way that format is with half and half fishing, that happens awful. It's a bad. They have a recipe for disaster, and it has been a disaster as far as that stuff is concerned. So at least it looks like going into 25, they're cutting the field, but they're cutting the field, and they're not going to have those off days anymore to where that awful scenario is going to happen basically every tournament. It's not going to happen every tournament anymore because there's no more off days. It's not splitting the field. That, to me, that's the biggest benefit of what their change is.
It was a benefit to us too, because I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that I cashed a check when MLF was down here fishing the heavy hitters, and they fished Jordan Lake and had an off day on a day I had a tournament, and I might have ran some of Michael Neal's stuff. Sorry, Michael. But
you know, it's funny, right? We all do that. Like all of us weekend warrior fishermen, like we comb YouTube, or we're going through all the Bassmaster pictures trying to find out. So of course it's going to happen, you know. At
all major sports are like that. I mean, everyone's trying to steal everyone's
stealing
playbook.
signs, you know.
Espionage is a huge thing. You know, everybody talks about it in professional bass fishing. Like, if you could change one thing, like the no information rule, like we need to crack down on it. It's so hard to do that when you have to market, you have to sell you know, your sponsors and stuff like that. It's really hard to do. The only thing I could think of is you can't room together with anyone, and they take your phones away from you the whole time, and they give you a two-way radio. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else you're gonna do, man. And you can't have internet access, but there's safety that goes along with all that. So, but you know, what is something that you I guess I think Mercer asks this a lot, but like, if there was one thing you'd like to see changed, what would you like to see changed in the professional fishing world?
The one thing I've been talking with Bassmaster about it is we need to polygraph for more. They polygraph, and it's they ask a handful of questions. I want them to ask more questions. Mm-hmm. I really want it to be a disincentive to play in the gray as the perception of a lot of anglers. It's the perception that a lot of anglers play in the gray. But that's not reality. The reality is there's only a couple that play in the gray. And then the vast majority would never consider sacrificing their career for one good event or something like that. You know, I mean, like a Swindle or, Ed or, guys I room with, Polinick. I mean, there's the vast majority would never even consider sacrificing their career to break a rule or to even play in the gray to try to get a little bit of help on like one tournament or a couple tournaments. Like, that's just, to me, I would never consider that. We just have to make sure that we have that extensive questioning during every polygraph, because they polygraph almost every tournament, and they ask for the no info, and they ask a few different other rules. But I think they should ask like a dozen questions on the no info rule, and I think they should be definitely more extensive than they are about it. And once that, because the anglers know basically what questions they're going to ask. So if they're not going to ask the question, then that might be something that they could play in the gray on. Yeah. So I just want to make sure we ask about all the gray areas and make sure but that's my 2 cents on that. As far as the overall Bassmaster Elite Series goes, man, we have, I think we got a good model going. I think we have a lot of momentum. I think we got a good rookie class coming in. I just want to make sure that we're not booting out too many guys and culling too many guys every year. I mean, we only got 100 guys, and we're basically kicking out a little more than 10% of that each year. And I think it should be less than 10%. I think that they need to figure out how to squeeze that down and make sure that we have, the double qualifiers all reverting back to the elites. But that's about it. I mean, I think it's just some little fine tweaking. I don't think there's any major overhauls that we need to do. And everybody wants bigger payouts, of course, but
sure.
You can wish in one hand and crap in the other one and see which one fills up first.
You can wish in one hand and poop bait in the other. See which one fills up first.
So you have Bomba hand.
Yeah, that's right. I got 2 final questions. I'll turn it over to the guys because I run my mouth too much. What is that feeling like, or how do those conversations go? Maybe a 2-part question. When some of your good buddies do get, they don't requalify for the elites. How does that go down? Like, I'm sure you've had good friends that over the years it's happened to, and how does those emotions roll and those conversations go?
It sucks, man. I've been doing it a long time. Early in my career, when it was the Bassmaster Tour, even before the Elite Series, I think there was one year that we had like 17 guys not come back. Now, granted, it it was like 150 or 170, somewhere in that range on the tour at that point. And we had like 17 guys go away. We had a pretty big turnover rate back then, and I thought it was, too much, but that's where, a lot of guys, they were running out of money or whatever was going on. But, like one guy, in particular, there's a number of friends, I'll say, that are not coming back for next year on the elites, which really sucked. But, like one where it's really kind of heartbreaking was Daryl Gleason. And Daryl has, his home lake is Toledo Bend, and that's where we're starting next season. It's like, oh my gosh, just put a knife in there and turn it on him, guy. That sucks. Daryl was a lot of guys like Daryl. He's a good dude. And he put a long emotional, post, after the last elite, because he knew from the points he was not going to make it. He was not going to requalify. And he put a big long post out there. And it was interesting. If you go back and look at it, a bunch of the elite guys, man, commented like, "Hey, miss you, buddy. You work hard and you'll be back, I'm sure." That kind of stuff. I commented on there just because it's tough to kind of get knocked back down to the minors and have to work your way back up.
Yeah. I think that you see the cohesion and camaraderie when guys make those posts and stuff like that, and it really is a fraternity. And so when you welcome guys to fraternity, like it definitely appears that way from an outsider's perspective. I have one off the wall question, and I'll turn it over to these guys. So a good buddy of ours, his name is Kieran Stevenson, his dad Daryl. They fish the Bassmaster High School Series. They actually just won yesterday for the teams on the East, and he had a question for you, and it's totally random, but and we're going to do this in the future. We're going to ask our fans to ask questions. How do you keep your hands warm when it's cold and raining and you got to fish? Like, what is the best gloves, or what's the best technique you have?
That's a tough one, man, because I've battled with that over the years. This is no lie. I've probably bought over 100 different types of pairs of gloves over the years to try to find something that works perfectly. But I've got a condition called Raynaud's syndrome. And if you're not familiar with Raynaud's, it's a condition to where the capillaries at your extremities will overreact when you get cold. So me especially, my fingers, they'll turn blue because the capillaries will shut down faster, just to try to keep the blood in your torso, because it thinks that you're in a crazy situation. And it's so like my toes will get these sore spots and my fingers will get these sore spots. So believe me, I have tried very hard over the years to figure out the best method for that. And to me, there is no good method for that. If you try to wear gloves when it's raining, you're going to do nothing but get frustrated. And I feel like there are some times when wearing gloves in rain that are not 100% waterproof will actually make your hands colder than if you don't wear gloves. So unless they're a straight wool glove, I know Stryker just came out with a fingerless wool glove. That is one option. But even once those ones get drenched, I still think any type of wool glove that's soaking wet will keep your hands a little colder than it could be if you just don't wear any gloves. But the biggest thing, and I've learned this from looking at research with Raynaud's, is you want to slowly expose your hands to cold over a period of days and weeks. Slowly expose it to a little more cold, and you can actually acclimate your hands to cold temperatures. If you work in an office environment for 3 weeks and then all of a sudden you go out there and fish in 45 degrees in rain, it's a shock to your hands. And that shock, it hurts. And to me, it really hurts, like my fingers, to have that exposure to the cold just in a quick fashion. So you need to kind of build up your almost like your tolerance to the cold through your hands, whether it's 5 minutes of cold with no gloves and then 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. If you can build up your your tolerance to the cold, all of a sudden after a few weeks of kind of getting your hands acclimated to it, you go out there 45 degrees in rain, you can actually do it, and it's not an excruciatingly painful situation. So that's my advice, is to figure out a way to expose yourself to that cold in a way to prepare yourself for when you are going to go out there.
So are you ice tubbing it now? Ice tubbing it weeks before every single cold event?
No, absolutely not.
No ice tub like Swindle. You keep it around with you.
Yeah, Swindle's the one who does it, right? I mean,
I think there's a couple other guys doing it, but he's always
I mean, you could. There are some of the studies of the exposure of people with Raynaud's with in their hands of dipping it in ice water. Like, that's too cold. You don't need to go that cold. You just need to expose your hands to like 40 degrees you don't need to expose your hands to, below freezing. You just need to expose it to like 40 degrees for some period of time. And then the next day, 40 degrees for a little longer, 40 degrees for a little longer, whatever that looks like, and however you can do it. To me, it's just going outside and doing stuff with no gloves on. That's really where I try to get the exposure to it.
A new cold water bait, man. Just call it Raynaud. I like that. Like, that'd be a good color. So I'll turn it over to these guys. I appreciate it, John.
You got anything? Okay, so two questions, and I know I've had people ask before, and I'll let you tell it. How did you come up with the name Missile for missile baits?
So my good buddy Rick Hawkins, I've been friends with him since I was 15. So when I got into college, so I think I might have still been in high school. He just nicknamed me the cruise missile, because that was back when we were in the middle of the Iraq War, and if you turned on the news, all you would hear about is, Tomahawk cruise missiles fired, Tomahawk cruise missiles fired, and so just that cruise missile thing was etched in everybody's brain, and he just started calling me the cruise missile, and it stuck. So when I was in college, basically the internet was being invented and everybody started using it. So that meant everybody was getting an email address. So I logged on to an email service, and I typed in John Cruise, and daggone if it wasn't taken. I'm like, who the hell? and I didn't want to have like John Cruise 427,802 at the end of it. I wanted it to be like, completely unique to me. And so then I typed in cruise missile. It was available. So boom, there's my email, cruise missile. I still use that same email today for a lot of my personal stuff, and it's still it just kind of stuck. And so a lot of people that correspond with me, they see that cruise missile thing, and it all kind of gets it goes full circle, so to speak. But then with the missile baits, I wanted to have a name that was catchy and a name that was kind of unique to me, but it didn't have my name in it. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we did Missile.
Makes sense. There you go, folks. The last one for me, and you don't have to give any specifics, but Missile has released some great baits in the last year. Really great. I'm never much of a straight tail worm fisherman, but I always now have a magic worm tied on. Like, that bait just straight catches fish however I fish it. Finally got some bombas. I got with a buyer and got me an order, got a few in. I haven't really had a chance to fish them, but I'm looking forward to that. You don't have to tell us what, but you got anything coming this year for Missile? Any new baits?
We got a bunch of stuff coming.
Awesome.
We have four new products that I'm currently working on to release within the next year. One of them will probably be announced in the next month or so, month and a half. The other one will be a classic release, and then or maybe even two of them as a classic release, and then we'll have another one for next summer to be released there. So yeah, we're absolutely full throttle on new products, and I want to continue to churn that bucket to keep things going. I was texting last night at 10 o'clock with our one mold maker that was sending me pictures of where our sample is at the current time. So yeah, a lot of good stuff coming on. I mean, all over the map as far as products go. So I'm excited about about all of them. I think there's potential in all of them to be really cool and different and unique. And a couple of them I think are going to be total home runs.
Awesome. You guys got anything?
No, we just hope you're the only cruise missiles we're firing in the future.
Yeah.
So, no, appreciate you taking the time,
kidding.
John.
Yeah, before we wrap up, John, just a minute to plug your socials and all your sponsors that make everything possible for you.
Yeah, I mean, I do the big four on the social media side, the Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. That's all I do. I don't mess with anything else, really. So that's kind of where I go and put my efforts. You can't be everywhere at every time to everybody, but that's where I try to keep up with. If you follow me on any of those social medias, you'll get a little dose of everybody that I work hard to represent. I mean, obviously I own the missile, but then my boys are down there at Cashin, try to take care of all them peeps down there. Ladies and gentlemen of Cashin are amazing people, and been working with them for a long time. Really enjoy, and I just enjoy a lot of the partnerships that I have throughout the industry, to whether it's Basscat or Cashin or Sunline, or those different companies that I work with. I don't look at it as a sales situation. I look at it as like a business partnership, because they have products that are really good. If it's not a good product, I'm not going to talk about it. And I've told people, could you make a post about this? I'm like, bro, I don't use that. I'm like, why? It's because I use this other product I think is better, and I don't use it. So I'm not going to, I tell people I'm not going to post about it.
Yeah.
So they, I think all the companies that I work with, they've become to know that. And I feel like that the people that I interact with on social media, they know that I'm going to try to educate them, and then I'm going to tell them what I use. If they want to use it, that's fine. If they don't want to use it and they want to use something else, like maybe they want to use Seaguar instead of Sunline, that's fine. But I'll show you how to tie the knot either way. Mm-hmm. And I'll show you how to, why I tie a 20-foot leader versus a 10-foot leader on my spinning rods. I'll explain that to you. And if you want to use your line and not mine, that's fine. But if you want to use what I use, if I thought something was better, I would use it. But if you want to use what you want to use, that's cool. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, you do a great job of that, of selling your partnerships, letting people know who you use, but also that it's not the end all be all. Sometimes some folks are super pushy with like, you have to use this because it's the greatest thing ever made, and we know that's when you start seeing everybody argue in the comments.
I tune that out myself. Yeah,
yeah. Especially not tying videos. If you really want to get people worked up on the internet,
don't get me
not tying video.
Loyalty goes a long way.
But well, John, we do appreciate you, everybody. I'll have John's socials linked down below. You'll be at most of the shows if they don't interact or don't conflict with your elite schedule. Sure, you'll be at the Classic and that. Are you coming down to Sanford for the Cashin community?
Oh yes,
or
I'll be down at the Customer Appreciation Day. Okay, December 2nd. I will be there.
So if you guys want to meet John, talk to John, there's opportunities at the Classic and some of the other shows. If you're local and a fan of Cashin and a customer, you can swing by that Customer Appreciation Day on December 2nd. They'll have some good food. It was a lot of fun last year, so we'll definitely be there hanging out. And other than that, you guys got anything else for John while we have him?
Good to go.
Thank you for taking time out of your Sunday, John.
Yeah, thanks, John. If you can just hang out for 1 second, I'm going to close us out here, and then we'll say goodbye off air. So everybody, appreciate you listening. Make sure you like, follow, comment, subscribe, all that stuff that we have to say every week. Make sure you follow John on his socials. Check out Missile Baits. I promise you're going to love them. And help us continue to grow a culture of anglers, helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Yeah. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.